Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hi and welcome to the second episode coming up on your reader as episode 1 of Your Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I thought in this particular episode, as we're right at the start of this journey together with the podcast, that it may be a little bit pertinent to just give you a little bit of insight into who I am. Who is this Frances Cosway running this podcast? What's her experience and what's been my journey in terms of creating forever homes, not only for myself, but also for many, many, many clients of mine. And so even though I find it a little bit difficult to talk about myself in this way, because I feel it's a bit, I don't particularly like it. I do know that when I'm listening to podcasts, I do like myself to understand and know a little bit about the person that's running the podcast. And so I thought I'd eat my humble pie and basically tell you a little bit about my journey. And I didn't actually start in interior design when I left university. So I suppose if I start at the start of my journey, I really left school and studied a Bachelor of Business majoring in marketing many, many, many moons ago. And I actually practiced marketing for over 20 years. And I had a great desire to live in Europe. My mother was born in the Netherlands and she lived in Amsterdam until she was 7, and then she came out to Australia in the early 50s, as many families did after the Second World War for the supposed better life. So I was very curious about my family who were living or still are living in the Netherlands. And my father's father lived in, my grandfather was born in London. So there was plenty of reason for me to pack up and go for what was meant to be 12 months. 12 years later, I came home. So I had great opportunities when I went to Europe. I lived in Amsterdam, I lived in London, I lived in Ljubljana in Slovenia, and I also lived in Antwerp in Belgium. And I loved every single one of those places for a whole lot of different reasons. I spend most of my time in Amsterdam and London, and it was I practiced marketing in all of those countries. And quite incredibly, when I look back on it now, I was able to practice marketing in a foreign language, which was Dutch. And then I did it again in Slovenia. And obviously in London, we speak the same language, so it wasn't so much of an issue. So I lived in London, I travelled for 12 months, lived in London for 12 months, went to live in Amsterdam for 5 years, bought my first house, and then I went back to London for 5 years, and I lived for short amounts of time in Belgium and Slovenia, and then I eventually came home. But when I was living in Amsterdam, I bought my very first apartment, and incredibly in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands, you're able to borrow 110%, and I thought that was just such a big chunk of money to bite off. But really, that's how everyone bought their properties there, and I couldn't have done it without the ability to do that. I didn't have a deposit saved, but by borrowing 110%, and the other great thing in the Netherlands is your mortgage is a tax deduction, so it was really a no-brainer. So I bought this amazing apartment, which is now in one of the hippest parts of Amsterdam. I no longer own it, unfortunately, right near the river. And I renovated that as soon as I hadn't even moved in. So I painted everything. And what I didn't like about it was the kitchen was dire, and they have the hot water service above the sink, and it was just classic stuff. But there was just no way that I was going to be living in that way, even though that was how I suppose the Dutch lived. I had other ideas. So I brought my culture, I suppose, to how, I wanted to live. And I combined, I suppose, the way things are in Amsterdam with the way things are where I came from, and I made it a home to suit me. And so I followed what I often tell my clients. Well, it's probably one of the number one things I tell my clients is I followed my heart. Now, I didn't know how long I was going to be there. I certainly knew that I was going to be there for a good 5 years, and that turned out to be true. So I thought, I am going to create a place that I really love. And I wasn't really thinking about how timeless it would be. I had a really loud splashback. I bought tiles that I absolutely fell in love with. And you know what? 20 years later, I still love those tiles, even though I don't live in that house anymore. When I look at photos of that kitchen, I still love those tiles. So I followed my heart, and that's what I say to people all the time: follow your heart. You can't go wrong. It doesn't matter what the trend is. So anyway, I created a super functional, heaps of storage in my kitchen, and with the bathroom, I completely remodeled it. We needed a laundry. I didn't want the laundry in the kitchen, which is the common thing in Europe, in both London and the Netherlands. So I basically adapted everything to suit my lifestyle. And of course, that reaped rewards when I went to sell it anyway. But the other thing I introduced was putting a bath in. Now, a bath in the Netherlands is just unheard of. It's just not a common thing, particularly in apartments in Amsterdam. They don't have a space. It's a super luxury. And I thought, well, it's not a super luxury for me. It's bog standard, and I want to be able to have a bath. So I had to create a bathroom that was going to take a bath and still be able to have all the other things that I needed. So I completely renovated it. I loved that apartment. I had a bright red wall. I just had everything how I wanted it. I put in some amazing cabinetry with drop-down desks and all that sort of stuff, and it was fabulous, and I had an amazing time there. When I moved to London, I sold the flat in Amsterdam to purchase the flat in London. London was a lot more expensive than Amsterdam, as you probably are aware, and I renovated that before I moved in as well. So again, completely repainted. And the problem in a lot of English properties is it's very closed, so not a lot of open plan. This was not bad. It had really good space because it was built in the 70s, which is great. A lot larger than a lot of the other apartments that were available for similar prices. But I needed to really knock out walls and make it feel larger because the spaces were relatively small in the living areas. So, I knocked out walls, and again, I followed my heart. Green is my favourite colour, and I put in a green tiled splashback, and I didn't care if, when I was going to sell that place, that people didn't like the green splashback, because again, I needed to create my own roots in the city that I was living in, and I knew that renting properties didn't make me feel settled, and I had a lot of problems settling in London because I didn't have my own home, and after buying that home, it made a massive difference. So again, I followed my own philosophy, and I follow the advice that I give all my clients, and that is to basically, do what I wanted to do, and I put in things that I loved. So they were the two big renovations that I did. I mean, I renovated the bathroom, the kitchen, and I did this in all the in both properties. But it was particularly in London that I started doing it for. I started doing interiors for friends of mine. I think they saw the changes that I made in my apartment there, and they said, "Oh, can you help me? Do my place?" And so I started doing that. And I really loved the process. I think what I loved the most, where I got my biggest buzz, was I'd create something for them or come up with an idea or a thought, and we'd execute it. And they just loved it. And it was like, oh, I could never have come up with that on my own. It's so awesome that you were able to make me think about that, because I wouldn't have thought about that myself. And that just made me feel so good. It made me feel like I could really make a difference to how people lived in their homes. And so I thought, okay, well, it's an area that I've always been interested in. As kids, we were dragged from house to opens, and we're always fossicking around in dilapidated houses and abandoned houses and just looking for stuff and seeing things. And I don't know, we just grew up with houses. And so it was just ingrained in me, architecture and design and interiors. So I thought, maybe this is the thing that I really should be doing. I enjoyed the marketing, but I wasn't, screamingly passionate about it. So I decided to study interior design in London, and I thought, well, I'm definitely in the right city to be, studying interior design. And so I enrolled in a course, and I was still working in marketing at one of the massive multinationals. And I started doing it at night. And I started doing more jobs for other people. And I realised that, I should start a business. I'll do it on the side, and then eventually I will quit my day job, corporate job, and then start, my own business. So I did my study, and I just basically started my business in London. And my grandmother got very sick in Australia, and she was my Dutch grandmother, my Oma, and I was pretty close with her, and I needed to go. I needed to come home. She was basically on death's door, so I flew home at very, very short notice, and she died 2 hours after I landed, so I was with her when she passed. While I was back in Australia, I thought, well, it's really now or never. I suppose that hit home for me, that I'd been away from my parents and my family for over 12 years, and I thought I really need to give it a crack. And so I came home, and that's when I established White Pebble Interiors. I was still doing a little bit of corporate, but it was really when I had my children. So I came back in 2010. I came back in 2009. I had my first child in 2010, and I started White Pebble in 2010 as well. So it's really been an incredible evolution. We've also, my husband and I have also built several houses, and we've also built our forever home. So I've been through the journey many times myself, so I'm able to really empathise with people in terms of what that journey's like and what they can expect. And I suppose that was also the reason that I wrote the book, Your Forever Home, because people kept asking me the same sorts of things around, well, how do I know what I don't know? That's the biggest thing. And how do I know, what's the next step and what to expect, and what's the builder going to tell me, and how do I know they're taking me for a ride? So I thought, well, I'll write a book and get the process started. So that's been fabulous. And I still get such great comments about the book. And I suppose the book is very, straight down the line. It's very much my style. I am very straight down the line. I am very upfront and honest. And, I say it as it is, a spade's a spade in my world. And look, that doesn't always suit everyone, of course. But for those that it does, it's great. I am who I am. And what you see is what you get. So it's been... we're now 2020, so it's been 10 years. It's really been probably the last 6 years that the business has been fully going. We moved into our studio last year. I've had a team for many, many, many years, locally and offshore. And, it's been such an amazing process, because I started off in, I suppose, styling for sale. I knew that was something that I could get into. It wasn't where it was completely saturated like it is now. And I had really good relationships with our local estate agents, because I, so passionate about real estate and homes and seeing what people were doing, but also because we were building as well. One of them was a investment property, so that was a house to flip. So I wanted to see what was going on. So I had a really good relationship with the local estate agents, and they knew me really well. So I basically just went up to one of them and said, well, can I come in and do a presentation to your team about, what I've got to offer? And I did that, and I started working with some of those agents in terms of getting their houses prepped. Some of them would pay for my services for their clients. Others would get me to quote up for their clients how I could, how we could get their house ready for sale. And that may have been big makeovers. Some of them were almost a massive renovation to get them prepared for sale. Others were just doing styling and so forth. But what I really wanted to do there was get my name out there and be known for being in that space. And the whole thinking I had was that I was going to use that as a springboard and an avenue to then really go into the interior design space, which was ultimately what the goal was. And so from the styling for sale, which I no longer do, no matter who asks me, that part of my business I don't have anymore. I don't do that anymore. I can add so much more value in the other space. So, we can't be everything to everyone. And but what was actually happening was when I was styling for the client, the person that was selling their home, it was the buyer that would then say, "Oh, love what you've done. Can we basically have everything that you've done? Or can you come back and create something with what we've got and get some other bits and pieces?" Or it was the seller that would then say, "Well, we've bought this new place and that's why we're selling this house. Can you come and set up our other house?" And that's exactly what I needed it to do. I needed to have that springboard. And so that was a really good opportunity. And then I realized that, styling wasn't where my heart was. I could make a difference, but it was short-lived, and I suppose it's superficial because it's not really a lived-in home. So it wasn't where I felt not only could I make the biggest difference, but it wasn't where my heart was and my passion lay. And so, you have to keep going with where you're going to get the biggest amount of satisfaction. And so I just kept going down the interior design path. But then other things kept cropping up. Having lived in Europe for so many years, the sustainability thing is just so much bigger there. And I was so passionate about it in Europe, long before it became a big thing, I suppose. My nickname in the office was always Eco Warrior, and, "Oh, what are you up to now?" And I was always hounding everyone else what they were doing in terms of how many flights they were taking and how they were getting to work, because I used to cycle, and it was a big thing on a daily basis. And so coming here, knowing what could be done in Europe, and then getting so frustrated with what couldn't be done here because we are so far behind. And then my husband being so incredibly passionate, it was just a meeting of the minds, and we really wanted to create our own home that was sustainable, that was comfortable, that was healthy, that felt beautiful without having any sort of artificial heating or cooling. And so we built that house, which I managed from lock-up stage to the end, which was incredibly taxing, and I really don't recommend doing that. And I couldn't even work because it just took up so much time. I was on site every day, all day, just meeting all the trades and following things up and everything else. But we did that so that house was built in 2014. We moved in December 2014, and, we won the best ecological and sustainable home in 2015, and that felt great. And so I can take what we've done and all the things that we're constantly learning about and take it to my clients that are really passionate about sustainability, because I am really passionate about making a difference in that space. And I feel that it doesn't take much to make a difference. You don't need to have a passive house accredited home, but you can still use some key principles to make a difference. And, I'd like to drive that home further too. And so the business has evolved. The business my whole stance has evolved as well. I've decided that following my passion into forever homes is such a big thing for me, because I feel that, a forever home, the choices are so different, and the way you go about that project is so different than if you just plan to be in a house short term, or it's interim, or you're going to flip it to make a quick buck. And so I love working with people who are so passionate about creating a forever home that is really going to stand the test of time and be something, a reflection of them. And so that's why I've decided to direct my business down that path. And I suppose that's the whole impetus for this whole podcast, has been to really share not only the experiences that I've had myself, but the experiences that I've had with my clients, and the information that I know that I can impart and that I learn about all the time, because I'm constantly learning. And I feel as a designer that it's our job to make sure that we're bringing the latest products and knowledge and everything else to our clients so they can make really good choices that are all of market rather than just a very small selection from certain salespeople. And so my journey from an interior designer perspective has certainly evolved from a stylist to, doing decorating jobs to, building my own places and for flipping, but also my own forever home to, I suppose being now an interior designer that's very, very focused on a very specific part of the market. And it's not to say that I won't do other things, but that's the part that gives me a big, big buzz. And to work with people for years and then to see their faces when they walk into that space is just, that's where I get my passion. And so this, Australian who has this big background in marketing and worked for massive big multinationals, decided to follow her heart in, I suppose my late 30s. And I think it is possible for people to do that. And there's always an opening and a gap for doing something that you really love. And it's been fascinating for me to see how things have evolved for me. I never ever thought that I'd launch a podcast. I never thought that I'd create an online course. I never thought that my business would grow to the extent that it has. I never thought that I'd have 2 brands. I never thought I'd have a team. I think my whole drive for the business was, I'll work school hours and I will work 3 days a week. I mean, they're my famous last words because it's far from either of those two things. I do still pick up my kids from school and I take them to school, and but we have all the school activities, so things are not exactly as I'd planned them to be. But there's some great things, and I've met some amazing people, and my journey has been non-linear. And I think as any small business owner will tell you, if I could draw a line for you now, you'd squiggle, squiggle, squiggle. It goes backwards and forwards, up and down, and it's not just a straight linear line or even just a normal bell curve. It's so much different to that. And every day I'm learning new things. My marketing degree has certainly come in handy, but I had to go and relearn a whole lot of different marketing things because we're now living in a digital world. So it's very different to how it was when I was studying marketing many, 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 many moons ago. Let's say 25 years. No, more than that, 28 years. So it's a bit scary when I say that. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into my story. How have I got into this space? Why am I so passionate in this space? What drives me? I'm so driven to make sure, my passion is so high in making sure that people create homes that they love, and to keep reminding them, forget about the trends and forget about what everyone else is saying. Be confident in who you are and making this home for you. And if I can just drive that home, I know that we're going to create better homes for people that are a reflection of their personality rather than being a cookie cutter approach that I just see everywhere and breaks my heart. And I want timeless, and I want it to, and effectively just creating what everyone else is doing. And I'm not about that. I think that things can be so much more interesting than that. And, currently we are in the lockdown as I'm recording this with COVID-19, and I feel so happy and fortunate that I live in a home that I think I don't mind being here. This home is a reflection of us, and I made sure when we made that I made the choices for this home that I really couldn't care what everyone else was doing. I just wanted to choose the stuff that I'd loved. And some of the tiles for example, in our home are tiles that I'd loved for 10 years. So I couldn't care that they'd been around for 10 years. That's what I loved. And I knew that I'd never get sick of them because I'd loved them all that time. How was I ever going to get sick of them in another 10 years? And so that's where my passion is, to give people the confidence to just choose something for them and create homes that are so functional and adaptable. And if I can do that every single time, then I know that my purpose has been fulfilled. And so I hope that's given you a little bit of insight into my craziness and my passions and who is this woman, Frances Cosway. And so I look forward to sharing all of my insights, all of my passions, and all the things that I can possibly give you so that you can create a forever home you are going to love forever. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.